Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Oh, that's not going to work, is it? I've already tweeted it. I was going to do a little prize there for whoever could come up with the Brexit angle to the Greg Sausage Roll story, but given that I've already tweeted what I think the Brexit angle is, it would have been possibly the easiest prize in history. Not maybe as easy as garnering acres of newspaper coverage by doing a very deliberately provocative and entirely cynical stunt involving a sausage roll. We're having a day off today, a day off from the grown-up stuff, at least for the first hour and the third hour of the programme. Mystery Hour will be with us at 12. I'm drawn towards the minimum pricing of alcohol story at 11, but I'd really like to do it if we can from the perspective of people who'd be hit by it, because the massive majority of those of us talking about it wouldn't be hit by it. My nightly tipple goes up by a few quid. I'll be fine with that. You know, I might maybe cut down a tiny bit, but frankly I doubt it. People who will actually have to leave the bottle on the shelf if the prices are artificially inflated are the ones I want to talk to after 11. But as with all the best weekends, let's start with the sausage roll and move on to the alcohol. It's 5 minutes after 10. I don't know if you've seen this picture. To be honest with you, we nearly talked about it yesterday, but I thought, even me, with my absurdly well-tuned antennae for outrage manufacture, for the manufacture of outrage, even I thought that this one probably was going to sneak under the wire. Is anyone really upset by it? 0345606. Shall we open the box of trolls? Go on, let's have a look. Because you don't know whether they're real or not anymore. Racist attack on Christianity, writes John Digby. If they did this to Muslims, they would die or be locked in prison. They have done it to Muslims, John. Jesus is a massive prophet in the Quran. He's arguably the second most important prophet in their story. Pick me up on this, by the way, Muslim listeners. As I understand it, what we've got here is almost a full house of potential religious offence. If you're a Sikh, a Hindu or a Buddhist, I presume you're feeling very, very left out today. Because I would contend, cautiously, that you should be more offended by this if you're a Muslim than if you're a Christian. Because not only is Jesus your penultimate prophet, you also consider pork to be forbidden. Am I right? So not only have they replaced the penultimate prophet in your religious narrative with a sausage roll, which I can see would upset a Christian on the grounds of a sausage roll not being a very respectful substitute for the risen Lord. Actually, he wasn't the risen Lord at this point. He was still the baby Jesus. So they've replaced the baby Jesus with a sausage roll. As a Christian, this is outrageous. This is disgusting. But at least I'm allowed to eat pork. If I wasn't allowed to eat pork and they replaced my second most important prophet with a pork product, my goodness me, this is fatwa time, isn't it? 03456060973 is the number that you need. It's a semi-serious question. If you are genuinely upset by this, I'd love you to tell me why. I'd give you the proviso that I do try to go to church every week, and most weeks I succeed. I sit there sometimes listening to the gospel and the readings. Sometimes I have to do the readings. And I do sit there listening to the gospel and the readings and wonder how the hell people who call themselves Christians have managed to look at the same text, study the same Bible that I've spent my entire life reading, and arrive at conclusions so utterly at odds with the Christian message. The idea, for example, that you'll find on social media today, that Jesus would somehow be massively offended by a joke about a sausage roll while being completely cool with the continuing persecution of refugees. That's not a Bible I've ever read. It's a letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Yeah, be really, really horrible to your neighbour. Forget all that love thy neighbour rubbish. Be really horrible to your neighbour. And if they ever make a joke about Jesus involving a sausage roll, what's a sausage roll? Hang on, I'm in Corinth. You're not all Jewish, are you? Or are you? I don't know. Are you allowed to eat sausage rolls, or who knows? And then, of course, there's the vegetarians. I mean, how offended would a vegetarian? A Christian vegetarian? How about a Christian, a Jewish-born Christian convert who is now a vegetarian? Who's got the right to be most offended by this story? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060973. By the end of this hour, there's a very strong chance that I'm going to declare jihad on sausage rolls. What's that, James? You've just made jokes about fatwas and jihads. Oh, but doesn't that completely undermine all the people bloviating on Twitter about how nobody ever makes jokes about Islam? Yes, well, they do, funnily enough. And this, arguably, could be filed under jokes about all the Abrahamic religions. So, vegetarian, Christian, Jewish, Muslim. Anybody else got the right to be offended by this? And guess what the Brexit angle is? Have you got the Brexit angle yet? Have you checked my Twitter account, at Mr. James OB? After Brexit, will Greggs be able to rechristen... See what I did there? Would Greggs be able to rechristen the steak bake as a Cornish pasty? Because I think that geographical indicators is one of the areas that's presided over by the supranational European Court of Justice, isn't it? Is it? I think that, that's why if I make a fizzy wine in Kidderminster, I can't call it champagne. Even if I make a fizzy wine in a part of France that isn't Champagne, I can't call it champagne. Stilton cheese, brie, de mieux, various other things. I think feta cheese possibly has to be made in Greece, doesn't it? If you make a cheese identical to feta in England, I don't think you're allowed to call it feta. I could be wrong, but all of these, I've got the phrase DOP in my mind, something of origin, products of origin. I think that's all policed by the European Union. And therefore, after Brexit, which 57% vote to leave in Cornwall, after Brexit, will Greggs be able to rechristen the steak bake as a Cornish pasty? Let's not do that first. Let's move on. And a few of you pointing out, I have already mentioned this, but it's missing from my tweet, which is probably why it's popping up in my replies. Jesus was, of course, born into the Jewish faith, or at least put into the Jewish faith, if you will, by his parents. So Jewish, Muslim, Christian, vegetarian, vegan, Cornish. No, we leave the Cornish out of it. Who's got the most right to be offended by the Greggs joke? And genuinely, in brackets, who really is? I mean, really. Woken up this morning, seen this story and felt angry, rather than just felt, well, I don't really give a hoot about Christianity or sausage rolls, but I could probably say something vile about Muslims here and how you're not allowed to offend them. Well, I just did. Let's put a fatwa on Greggs and declare jihad on sausage rolls. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. Is there a serious side to this? Yes, there is, because Greggs have secured the kind of PR and advertising that would ordinarily cost gazillions of pounds. I like Greggs. I don't go there every day. I don't go there every week. When I do go, I usually favour the ersatz Cornish pasty that isn't a Cornish pasty. If I'm with the kids, I hope my wife's not listening, she'll kill me. If I'm with the kids, we sometimes go for the 3 for 2 on the sausage rolls, because there's 3 of us. And the sausage rolls are nice. Sausage rolls, I think somehow, they're one of the foods that I would say cheap is better than posh. Do you know, sometimes only white sliced bread will do if you're having a bacon sandwich, perhaps, or maybe even a cheese and pickle. You know, like white sliced Mother's Pride, the stuff we had growing up. None of this kind of 5-seed multigrain, Grovis, granary, whatever it may be. Sometimes only white sliced will do. I think sausage rolls are a bit like that. You can go to a farmer's market and get a sort of wild boar with compote of marmite and gooseberry mixed in with it. And it doesn't taste like a sausage roll should. A sausage roll should be greasy, flaky, and curiously pinky grey inside. And Greggs sausage rolls are magnificent. And they haven't paid me a penny to say this, and I'm only talking about it because they've stuck one in a manger. This is an act of marketing genius. Seriously, I hope someone at Greggs is getting a massive pay rise. Or do you think they will be... chip butty, you're absolutely right. Chip butty. You can't have a chip butty with anything but sliced white bread. You could maybe go for a roll, but if you're putting chips into anything that's remotely brown, bread-wise, you're a bit perverted. So, what do you think of what Greggs have done? Because I really like this. I think, and I may be overthinking it, I think they might have subverted the fetishisation of outrage that has become the latest national sport in Britain. You know how it's not actually the people who are outraged that lead the story, it's the people who are outraged by the people who are outraged. It's this notion that if 6 spotty students get together in Cambridge to protest against the statue of a slave trader in their quadrangle, that's just 6 spotty students doing what students have already done, have always done. But once the newspapers get hold of it, once the professional manufacturers of outrage get hold of it, that story will be reported on the other side of the world. But it's only 6 spotty students doing what spotty students have already done. It's angry old people that drive this cult of outrage in which we live at the moment. And to my eye, I wonder whether Greggs have deliberately done this. And that is the slightly more sensible side of this conversation. Do you think Greggs have just very, very deliberately set fire to a firework, watched it go off, and then sort of let it die down again and sat back and said, oh, we're really sorry about setting off that firework, but everybody's now talking about our sausage rolls. If you're in the marketing game, if you're in the advertising world, I'd love to know what you think about this. I think it's up there with the all-time greats, because it's cost them absolutely nothing. The Reverend Mark Anthony Edwards, a vicar in Newcastle, said, this is just disrespectful and arrogant. I would challenge them to release a similar stunt at Ramadan and face the backlash. It would be huge. So there you go. Is it really disrespectful and arrogant, or is it just an opportunity to kind of implicitly malign all Muslims? I don't know. If you are a Muslim, give me a call. 0345 6060 973. Tell me how you feel about having your penultimate prophet mocked and maligned in this way. If you're Jewish, and of course sworn off pork, if you go to that level of orthodoxy, is there anything in here that could be construed as offensive to you? And if you describe yourself as a Christian, then talk to me about why you think Jesus would be bothered about a flaky pastry pork-based snack. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. That'll do, won't it? 10:15. We got enough to be going on with there? And the question of whether or not after Brexit Greggs would be allowed to rename their steak bake Cornish pasty is one that we might save for Mystery Hour. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. You can be as silly or as serious as you like. If you are genuinely offended, we'll have a bit of fun with each other, but it won't be unkind or unpleasant. And if you are kind of coming at it from a non-Christian perspective and need to correct my brief introduction to the intermingling of Abrahamic religions, then you'd be particularly welcome as well. And I think I'll add to that list that occasional... Yeah, the occasional one that we throw into the mix at 10:15 in the morning, which is if you've got something interesting to say about this story from an angle that I haven't noticed, I'd love to hear from you as well. The time now is 10:15. All right, this is getting a bit hairy. Okay, Jonathan Weinberg has just elevated this to a whole new level of controversy. He says, you're missing the most crucial question, James. It divides opinion like few other things I know. Is it cold sausage roll or hot sausage roll? Strong. Greggs is hot every time, but not necessarily other. So I quite like a sausage roll from the supermarket chill cabinet. If you're just tuned in, we're talking mostly about sausage rolls and jihad. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call if you've got a view on who should be most offended by the Greggs advert. Their rivals in the baking world, be top of my list. Jews, who have, of course, sworn off pork and into whose faith Jesus was born. Christians, whose faith Jesus founded, and or Muslims, for whom Jesus is the penultimate prophet, and also pork is haram. Marion is in Finchley. Marion, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello,
I'm not a practicing Christian, but I certainly have a lot of Christian friends, and I'm very, very, very sad for all of those Christians who feel offence or upset.
Do you think any really do, though?
Well, you've heard a number talking on LBC, haven't you, who ran Ferrari.
You put me in an embarrassing position here, Marion.
You didn't listen. You weren't listening. You should be very, very embarrassed.
Nick and I make a point of never listening to a word the other person says. It means our friendship stays afloat.
Well, I hope you're listening to me.
I'm listening to you very carefully, but
Now,
go on.
What I have to say is I was brought up a Christian, and I love the story of Jesus and Mary, and who in this world knows what is the actual truth of anything at all.
Absolutely.
Right, so I was brought up on the story of Jesus and Mary, which I think is the most beautiful story, and the picture of Mary holding Jesus as a baby in all the great paintings in the world, and all the beautiful nativity scenes.
None of that's undermined by a sausage roll.
Yes, it is. It is.
2,000 years of tradition somehow subverted or polluted by a single picture of a sausage roll in a manger.
It's making a mockery of it, yes. Well, that's my view.
And I respect your view, but I'm now going to change it with a cunning bit of wordplay, Marion. Are you ready?
Yes.
Spell Jesus for me.
Well...
Spell it. Just spell it. It's not... Just spell it out.
J-E-S-U-S.
Now say it backwards.
S-U-S-E-J.
What does that say?
No, I don't accept jokes like that. No, I'm ringing on behalf, really, of my Christian friends.
It's a sausage.
I'm ringing on behalf... No, I don't see it as a joke at all. I think it's very poor taste, and it's making a mockery of something which is very, very beautiful, which little children
It's not,
love.
though, Marion.
What?
It's not. I go to church every Sunday.
I know you do.
We'll have the manger.
I listen to your programme.
We'll have the crib at the front. We'll have the crib at the front of church. It'll be set up. My kid's probably slightly old now to get involved in the nativity. The idea that any of that practice To be fair, before we go on, I don't think you gave me enough respect for that Jesus sausage joke, Marion. I feel a bit... I spent ages working. I spent ages working. That's some of my best material. All right, fine. But when I go to church at Christmas, I honestly... I reject the notion that anybody in the congregation is going to have their joy or their pleasure in any way compromised by a picture of a sausage roll. No?
No,
okay. There we go. No, Marion has put the case for the prosecution very neatly, very charmingly, very articulately, and she completely crushed my hilarious wordplay-based gag. 23 minutes after 10. Ken's in Newcastle. Ken, what do you think?
Well, first of all, James, Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God. He is not a mere prophet, as the Muslims falsely teach. The greatest miracle in history, James, is that God became a man and dwelt amongst us.
Come off it. What about Leicester City winning the league?
We have entered the mocking season, and you're one of the biggest mockers of Jesus that I hear. You continually mock Christianity, my friend.
Give me an example.
Well, today your tone is a mocking tone.
No. I'm mocking people who take offence. Ken. Just so you're clear, because I wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself further. I'm mocking people who take offence at a sausage roll. It's got nothing to do with Christianity.
You have total disregard to who Jesus is, my friend. I say that with sadness. This nation is now totally anti-Christ and a heathen nation. And I used to be a Roman Catholic, but I wasn't a Christian.
What are you now, Ken? What are you now? What
believe in Jesus?
What does God say about sausage rolls?
God says He now commands all men everywhere to repent because we mock.
No, but specifically, what does he say? What does he say about sausage rolls?
Well, I wouldn't answer a foolish question like that. You're a very foolish man.
You've rung me, Ken. That ship's already sailed, mate. What is? I mean, just generally, what's the guidance on sausage rolls?
Stand before Jesus and give an account of your life when you die, my friend, and you won't be mocking about sausage rolls.
Are there sausage rolls in heaven?
Listen. It is appointed unto man to die once, but after this the judgment. You will give an account. We all give an account of our life to God. Don't mock Jesus. He came here and died, shed his blood for your sins on the cross.
Are there any sausage rolls in heaven?
Do you mock Jesus Christ, my friend?
Are there any... I haven't mocked Jesus Christ.
You're a mocker of God.
I'm a mocker of people who can be offended by a sausage roll, Kenneth. Now tell me, are there any sausage rolls in heaven?
Mr. Ferrari is also a mocker of Jesus, and he
that's true.
Claims to be a Christian.
That's true. He is going to burn in hell.
He falsely claims to be a Christian.
I suppose...
Listen, God's judgment is coming to this nation.
Hallelujah!
The judgment of God.
I'll tell you what.
You won't be mocking on that
Let's park on a point of agreement, shall we?
Go ahead.
It would be impossible to get a cold sausage roll in hell.
Listen, friend, hell is a place of torment where you are headed at this very moment because you're not born again.
There, my friends, is Christian love. Christian love in all its sausage roll-flavoured glory. Ken, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Charmaine's in Epsom. Charmaine, this is pretty serious stuff. We may have underestimated the gravity of the situation here.
That was intense, yeah. I just wanted to say that... I don't know why I tell you why I'm a little bit, tiny bit upset, is that why do you have to bring Muslims and Islam into everything? Not you, but people. So I sympathise with Christians who are genuinely offended by this.
Do you think any are? I mean, Ken aside, I mean, like, sensible Christians.
I don't know. I think there might be a few, and I can understand that to a certain extent.
Can you really? Because I can understand it, like if you're going through the gears. If you go through the gears, I can understand how people might get to gear 1. But I don't understand how they then go, yeah, I'm going to move up through the gears now because this sausage roll has really offended my religious sensibilities. Every single word of the Bible teaches love, peace and tolerance. It doesn't say a word about sausage rolls.
I think if I was a Christian, I would probably just roll my eyes and just go ahead with doing, carrying on the rest of my day.
Go and buy some flaky pastry products.
Maybe. But I don't think it would...
You know why Muslims get brought into it. Muslims get brought into it because social media in particular has fomented an environment where people who are routinely, daily vile about men and women of your faith like to also simultaneously claim that nobody's allowed to be vile, rude or offensive about men and women of your faith. It's one of the most lovely, pardon the word, the most symmetrical of bigotries imaginable is that people who are daily vile about Islam simultaneously claim that you're not allowed to say bad things about Islam. That's why it's there, Charmaine, you know that.
Yeah, but the thing is that if you're genuinely offended, that's fine, but to get offended just because other people get offended about their things.
But they're not really offended. They're not. They've been groomed. They've been groomed by the Daily Mail manufacturing of outrage to be furious about a sausage roll. Poor old Kenneth.
But it's getting worse and worse, and it's just every little thing people are getting offended by, and they will bring Muslims into it when it's got nothing to do with us. I mean,
well, it has. He is the penultimate prophet in your faith.
He is. But we don't eat sausage rolls because, as you know, as you said, they're made of pork. So therefore, we don't buy sausage rolls from Greggs. So it's kind of all really irrelevant.
What do you buy? Cheese and bean bake?
Yeah, cheese and onion pasty.
Nice. Good work. See? Great. The unifying power of Greggs. Knitting together Abrahamic religions that have been at war with each other for the best part of 2 millennia. All it takes is a tasty, pasty product. It's 28 minutes after 10. Waleed is in Nottingham. Waleed, what's going on?
Already had my laugh out loud moment today.
It's not even mystery out yet, mate. Seriously, I'm going to get refunds. People are going to have to start sending me postal orders.
I think from the Muslim perspective, if I'm going to be facetious about it, the only thing that really offends me is the depiction of prophet. So I think by superseding the baby Jesus and the sausage roll, they've kind of done us a weird favour in a weird sort of roundabout way.
Yes.
I can understand a degree of offence, but
well, you're being very kind when you say that, and obviously, you can find someone like Ken to express outrage in a slightly comical fashion, but I actually take my Christianity relatively seriously, more seriously in private than I would ever kind of proselytise in public. I cannot imagine how anyone could be angered by this. Like, genuinely can't imagine. So you need to explain why you can.
Yes, I think that there's no malice in it. I think it's like what you said, James. I think it's just a marketing ploy, and a very shrewd one at that, nothing else. There's no malicious intent to...
no, but there is a malicious intent if the people... If Ken speaks for various different tribes of Israel, if Ken speaks for lots of people, then there is malicious intent, because they've kind of poked people like Ken, and I have to take Marion's word for it that Nick had a lot of similarly outraged and offended Christians on his show earlier this morning. Then they have deliberately stoked those fires, and that arguably that is a little bit irresponsible or a little bit unfair, or perhaps they deserve poking.
Possibly. Like I said, it just depends. I mean, it's from a Muslim perspective. If someone was to, lampoon the Prophet Muhammad and conflate him with, recent terrorist atrocities and what have you, then yeah, that's something that I would take offence with. But well, put it this way: if you ask any Muslim lad what his favourite, any Muslim lad my age, what his favourite film is, or top 5 films is, for me, it's one of them is Four Lions, and that just completely lampoons the Muslim faith, but not in what I find is a derogatory way. So
I hear you. Chris Morris's absolute work of genius, following the exploits of four. I believe the modern word is complete melts who also flirt with Islamist extremism, and I think, if I remember rightly, end up blowing themselves up while in fancy dress. It's 10:30. 0345 6060 973. It is a brilliant film. Watch it with Life of Brian. Watch them both together. Works perfectly. I suppose it's not funny because it leads to such deep-rooted division and hatred, but the ignorance it takes to look at this story about a sausage roll and bombard me with messages saying things like, "You'd never talk like this about Islam." Jesus is the second most important prophet in Islam. This sausage roll thing, I'm being told, offends Christians because it mocks Jesus. So you are mocking the Islamic faith as well. And the idea that these racists have about oh, no one would ever mock this, no one would ever mock that, it's nuts. I think, given that lunatic extremists might shoot you dead if you publish cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad in the way that Charlie Hebdo did, then I don't know that courage is necessarily the word to describe people that would deliberately provoke that sort of reaction. But my favourite example of this probably involved last time, it must be years ago now, because oddly my sense memory tells me I was facing in the opposite direction, which means it was in the old studio, and that dates it by 6 or 7 years, I think. And there was a spate of far-right people in this country going around burning Qurans, setting fire to Qurans, and this caused profound offence among some of my Muslim listenership, but not all of it. And one fella on the line was a full-on, crusading, furious Islamist, and he was explaining to me in great detail. He was like a kind of Muslim version of old Ken up in Newcastle a minute ago, and he was telling me I was going to hell and this and that and the other. And I told him, he asked if I'd read the Quran, and I told him that I had, but I'd read it on a Kindle. No, it wasn't a Kindle. It's too long ago to have been a Kindle. I'd read it, but I'd read it on my computer. I'd read it on my laptop. And I asked him whether me pressing delete on that file was as offensive to his sensibilities and his religion as some far-right loony setting fire to a copy of the book and filming it on YouTube. And the poor fellow's little head melted. He just couldn't quite grasp the sophistication of that intervention. Okay, so destroying it is going to see these people sent to hell, and anybody who approves of it or doesn't condemn it is also going to sent to hell as well. Yes, James. Okay, well, I read it on my laptop and I pressed delete at the end because, we're going back a few years now. I needed to free up some of the hard disk. Is that as bad? Is that as blasphemous as burning a copy? And now you just go and dip a toe into social media and people will still be going, sausage rolls, they'd never do it to the Muslims. And you sit here and most of the time, obviously, you feel a degree of despair and dismay at the success with which these people have been radicalised. But today, we're talking about sausage rolls. You can only really snigger at the levels of fury, and it's not even real. No one is offended on behalf of Jesus because Jesus is really the Lord of forgiveness. I also think he probably had quite a good sense of humour. He turned water into wine, not the other way round. And the idea that he would be in any way offended by this is, to me, as a lifelong churchgoer, educated by nuns from the Holy Trinity Convent, educated by Benedictine monks, church attenders from the cradle to today, nothing in the Bible tells me that Jesus would be really, really cross about a sausage roll joke. I think he'd find it funny. Unless, of course, he observed the Judaic attitudes to diet that are laid out in the Old Testament, in which case he'd probably be a little bit offended by the presence of pork there. But all I'm getting, the only people who seem to be cross about this are the people who are cross about Muslims. So Greg's make a joke about Jesus involving a sausage roll, and Islamophobia is ignited. If they knew that was going to happen, then maybe this was ill-advised. If they knew that it was going to kind of throw bones to the most bovine of our citizens and the most kind of hate-filled and divisive and stupid and ignorant, then maybe that was a bit silly. But I tell you what, I don't want to live in a world where people hold back from causing offence to... Well, that's it, isn't it? Who's offended? People who want to be offensive about Muslims. Happy days. Jake's in Brighton. Jake, what's going on?
Oh, I don't know, James. I really don't.
Well, why have you rung me?
Because that last caller, not the last caller, but Ken. I think they used to be Ken. Used to call up George Galloway. He's sort of like a young earther from the Highlands, so I wouldn't really worry about him too much.
He's not here to defend himself, and no. I don't want you to join me in the seventh circle of hell as a result of mocking his extremism. But I'm
not a sensible Christian, and to be honest, I think that's a bit of an oxymoron anyway. But let's moving on to the point about the sausage roll.
Yes.
I think there's two things. One, it doesn't matter, and two, it was deliberate by Greggs. But quickly, I just want to touch on the Judeo-Christian and monotheistic Abrahamic faiths, and touch that I believe they were plagiarised from the ancient Egyptian religions and the Sumerian faiths that went before them. Call me a pagan, whatever you want.
Certainly, calm down a bit, mate. Calm down. Yeah. Adapted. I think plagiarised is a bit strong, but all religions can be seen as the result of a process of evolution. The way that we've adopted various pagan rituals into Christian celebration. The date of Christmas is probably pagan.
Amen, Ra.
I do know all this. It's a bit YouTubey, isn't it?
Infantile. It's not a bit YouTubey. And some people might say they're
no, it is.
Scholars. They're serious scholars.
No. I know.
Should carry a bar
But I think everybody knows this.
No, they don't know.
Oh, okay.
This is what you want people to believe. You want everyone to think they already know it when they don't, so they can just gloss over the subject. But moving forth, we've got don't matter and deliberate. So basically, I believe that there are 250 gods, 5,000 religions throughout human history, so it doesn't essentially matter. Now, but in terms of it being deliberate...
Oh, I'm getting hungry. Mike's in Tottenham. Mike, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. You're on a roll. Sorry about the pun.
You're very, very strong.
I wanted to say, I think that this is really serious. and we should take it seriously. And I wanted to connect the sausage roll with the upcoming season of the mince pie.
Yes.
Now, presumably, a lot of listeners will be eating mince pies, including some of the people who are slightly upset about this sausage roll. And they should probably be aware that the mince pie once contained meat. And that in the ancient British Christmas tradition, sometimes mince pie was seen as a symbol of the baby in the manger. And I think there are parts of the country where they're referred to as baby cakes.
Are you sure?
I think so.
I thought that was a term of endearment popular in the homosexual community in 1970s San Francisco.
Well, it possibly
could be both. It could easily be both, but my God, some heads are going to explode.
I would just caution those people who object to the Greg's sausage roll that they may want to think twice before they bite into the mince pie in the next few weeks, because they may be. They could
be implicitly and unconsciously subverting the Christian tradition with an originally meat-based product. Do you? I mean, I kind of think it's important to laugh. Because otherwise you'd cry at this point in British history. But do you think anybody really is genuinely offended? Because I can't take the kind of box of trolls tweeting furiously about Muslims. I can't take them seriously. Because I just don't know anymore which ones are Russian bots or sock puppets or the same person with 5 different accounts. Cause I go to church. Probably a couple of people in the congregation will be a little bit cross with me about this, but they'll take it all in good faith because they're grown-ups. Genuinely offended by this? Do you really buy that?
No, I don't. I've got. I mean, I'm not a non-believer, but I've got Christian friends who are pretty laid back about most things, and it's this season, especially this season coming up. You're meant to have a bit of a sense of humor about these things, and
I mean, it's supposed to be quite a happy time.
Yeah, and the interesting thing I think is that there's always been this tension around Christmas in the English tradition. So you've always had Puritans saying, "Oh, you mustn't have plum puddings," and "Why are we celebrating Christmas?" and people should object to the Christmas tree. I mean, your previous caller was a bit obsessive about it, but there's loads of things that kind of fall into the Christmas basket that. Obsessives.
It is, yeah, and we're in that slightly tricky position of speculating on the motivation of people who claim to be offended, but when they try and articulate why they're offended, they either sound a little bit mad or dishonest. The only real strand of offence that you pick up in the comment sections under these stories or in the social media brouhaha's that have been very carefully cultivated, it is, as Charmaine suggested, it is just another excuse to hate on Muslims. Because it's like the opposite of Christianity. What's the central doctrine of your faith? Well, be excellent to each other. Love thy neighbour. That's more important, according to St. Paul, than even the 10 Commandments. Love thy neighbour. By the way, your neighbour's a Muslim. I hate my neighbour. I hate my neighbour, but I'm really cross about a sausage roll. Dominus vobiscum. And if you're familiar with the film Catholic Boys, you can insert Kevin Dillon's line yourself at the end of that. Dominus vobiscum. Here's the thing. No one's mentioned cheeks. You're supposed to turn the other one if you're a Christian. Someone hurts you, whether it's metaphorically or physically, you turn the other cheek. You don't go on social media and say, I'm really offended, even though I'm not really a Christian, because Greg's have been rude about Jesus and they haven't been rude about Muslims. I mean, seriously, when you write these tweets, how do you get to the end of them without noticing how dumb you sound? What is the message of Christianity? Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Tolerance, respect, peace. The parable of the Good Samaritan. Oh, and by the way, if someone does hurt you or offend you, you turn the other cheek. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's the Old Testament, dudes. New Testament is turn the other cheek. Are you turning the other cheek? No, I'm demanding that Muslims get offended and hurt as well. And if you can't offend the Muslims, then why are you offending the Christians? So, okay, so park that. Absolute rejection of the doctrine of turning the other cheek, which is in the Gospel. I mean, it is straight from Jesus' mouth, according to at least 3 of the 4 Gospels. But you don't like that. So you're not really a Christian in the sense of doing what Jesus told you to do. You're a Christian in the sense of being racist about Muslims and looking for any excuse to have a pop. So try this on for size. Jesus Christ is the second most important prophet in the Quran, in Islam, second only to Muhammad. And because Muhammad isn't mentioned much in the Quran, I think Jesus' name is either in the first or third person. I think that Jesus is named in the Quran more than any other human being. Oh, they'd never offend Muslims more than any other human being. or, of course, superhuman being, or supernatural being, or just being, more than anybody in the Quran named Jesus. But they'd never do anything to offend the Muslims. It's just thick now, this ludicrous stoking of the fires of bigotry and fury. And it ends up now hurting the people who are furious more than it actually hurts the target of their anger. Charmaine rang in. I foolishly suggested that she might enjoy a cheese and bean slice, and she, demonstrating a better grasp of the Greg's array of fine foods, just neatly swerved it and put down cheese and onion, because, of course, as any proper Greg's aficionado knows, there's no such thing as a cheese and bean slice. It's a sausage cheese and bean slice. And if you are sworn off pork for religious reasons, you're unlikely to tuck into a sausage cheese and bean slice. And in fact, Christians are the only Abrahamic faith that don't follow the doctrine of swearing off pork. So arguably, Jews and Muslims should be more offended by the presence of a pork product in the manger than Christians are, except Christians aren't. 0345 60 60973 is the number that you need. 10:52 is the time. Matt's in Canterbury. Matt, are you outraged?
Oh yeah, big time.
Furious.
No, happy and big recognition for your Jesus joke as well.
Thank you. I thought it deserved more.
Yeah, you didn't get enough recognition.
Sausage. It's brilliant. Anyway, carry on.
I'm brought up a good Christian boy, went to Sunday school, went to church primary school, church secondary school. I cannot, for the life of me, work out what there is to be offended by. And I think the problem is it's people fine-tooth combing through their lives to see if they can find something that they could possibly be offended by, and they obviously just haven't got enough time on their hands, so they just get offended by it. There is absolute... Greg's were not trying to imply that they think Jesus was a sausage roll, were they?
Are you sure? Can you prove it?
Well, I mean, genetically, Jesus was made of meat, so they were kind of right in that sense.
No flaky pastry.
But, well, no, we don't know, do we? But
I'm going in on that. I'm fairly confident there's no flaky pastry involving the biological makeup of any human being, let alone the Son of God.
Well, if you eat enough Greg's, there probably is.
No flaky pastry. So, yeah. You know why they're offended. There is only one reason why people are offended, and that reason is that they have somehow seen it as an opportunity to be rude about Muslims. And I guess maybe Greg should have seen that coming, given that these kind of people see almost everything that happens in their lives as an opportunity to be rude about Muslims. And it's unfortunate. Maybe, I don't know, I'd love to hear from another Muslim caller about whether or not... Well, Charmaine was confused about why they keep getting brought into it. But that's the only offence that they can articulate. Are you really offended? I can see why people are offended, because Greggs would never do this to Muslims. Can you get your head around that, Matt?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you say, Jesus is probably mentioned more in the Quran than he is in the Bible.
I don't know about that, but anyway, it's a good line.
It's quite a favourite prophet for them, so it's just people being offended for the sake of being offended.
What do they get out of it, do you think? I might make a documentary about this if I can find enough hours in the day. But it's going to involve tracking down some of my most assiduous stalkers on social media and talking to them about what they get out of it. What do you think they get out of it? Let me have a little glance over here. I've probably scared them all off now, have I? Let me find you an example. Here you go, here's one. I go to church every Sunday, I take it serious, monks, nuns, etc, blah, 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 snigger away, emptiness of our times, loss of any respect, clever, childish little schoolboy behind the bicycle shed. A clear anti-Christian theme has and is being propagated throughout society in recent times to support this advertisement on public media. However funny you find it, only encourages people to laugh. What do they get out of this, these people?
Well, I mean, they're a little bit unhinged, aren't they? Quite clearly, I think they just get a sense of importance, and I think a lot of the problem is people getting offended on behalf of other people as well. Or that could be offensive to Muslims, so I'm going to be offended on behalf of the Muslims. But
and the Christians and the Jews, and we haven't even mentioned the vegetarians or the People's Front of Judea. Ben is in Doncaster. Ben.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. What's on your mind?
Well, I've just been into Greg's perfect marketing material.
Just is.
M180, and the first thing I wanted to do was pull into Greg's and get a sausage roll.
And they're quite a recent arrival in the service stations. I mean, in the great scheme of things, it's another mark of genius. It's a brilliantly run company. What's the atmosphere like in the shop?
Well, I was speaking to staff, and it's broke their day up. They're absolutely loving it. Their day's going so quick this morning because it's just all that's being talked about.
Has it put trade up, do you think? Would you have gone in there if you hadn't been hearing about this sausage roll everywhere?
No, I wouldn't have gone to Greggs this morning. I would have gone straight to my destination. But I was speaking to the staff and they said, you know, there's people that's gone over to Burger King today because they want to boycott it for the day and stuff. But it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely madness.
You're going to go and have a Whopper as a mark of solidarity with snowflakes. What did you have, Ben?
I got a sausage roll. That was it.
You kind of had to, really.
I'm normally getting the meal deal, but it's not very good.
It's a bit early for crisps as well, mate. It's a bit early for crisps, isn't it?
I don't know.
Controversial. Might do that in the second hour. I'm enjoying this conversation so much. John is in Rochester. John, what would you like to say?
Good morning. Everyone's concentrating on the religious side. I'm absolutely furious.
Oh.
No one's considering the feelings of the sausage roll here.
You're right.
The sausage roll ends up in a manger, trussed up.
Yeah, it's got no dignity. It's got no dignity.
There's nothing there, is there?
No.
You know,
should be in a greasy bag. What are they thinking of?
Exactly. 2 for 1 deal.
Yeah. 3 for 2, mate, these days. Keep up. Actually, it might be 4 for 3. Is it 4 for 3?
4 for 3.
4 for 3 or 3 for 2?
I'm going to Greggs.
Everyone's going to Greggs. Scott Balcony needs to get some T-shirts printed over in Uxbridge. Everybody's going to Greggs. That's thought for the day. Everybody's going to Greggs. Cameron's in the industry. Thank you, John, on a more serious note, for remembering the sensitivities of the sausage roll community. Cameron writes, I'm in advertising and marketing, and in all honesty, this creative, as in the person who's put this forward, Jesus as a sausage roll, would have been put in there as a joke by the Greggs marketing team as a sort of wild card option when they presented to the Greggs top bods. We do it all the time, and regretfully the client rarely selects this kind of genius, almost always choosing to play it safe. What I love so much as a marketing professional is that meeting the Greggs top bods have seen that and gone, you know what, let's go with the sausage roll as Jesus for the Christmas campaign. Hurrah! Utter brilliance, writes Cameron in Edinburgh. And we've got time. I'll squeeze one in. George is in Rayleigh. George, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. To be honest with you, I'll keep it short and sweet. I think personally it's symbolic to the double standards of religion in this country. I don't really care about a sausage on a calendar. I'm a Christian, by the way. I think it's quite funny. But any time it feels that there's something with regards to the Islam faith,
who's the second most important prophet in Islam?
Jesus Christ, as what you've mentioned earlier. But if we call a spade for spade and we look at it as what it is, this is depicting Christmas and the celebration of the birth of Christ, which is not a Islam. It's not an event. It's not.
Well, you can't become the second most important prophet in a religion without being born, George.
No, but we understand. If we look at the facts, I mean, I'm not Islamophobic.
So what would you like to see to balance things up? How would you like to see Ramadan mocked?
Well, to be honest with you, that's not my argument. The point that I wanted to put across, having my time as there, is the double standards in society that what we have for Christianity, which is marginalised, and I think for Islam.
You think Christianity is marginalised, George?
Definitely, 100%.
Mate, let's go to church together this weekend, yeah?
Can I give you a couple of quick points?
Unfortunately, the crescendo in the background is rising, and also you're talking rubbish.